Good morning and welcome to this session. The session is the innovation of the wow, and we're going to discuss and debate this morning how and if even hotels can keep up to date with the experience that we as the guest, as the consumer, enjoy at home. My name is Simon Jansen. I'll be your moderator this morning. I'm Vice President Business Development for Swisscom Hospitality. For those of you who don't know us, Swisscom Hospitality is the dedicated international hospitality-focused division of Swisscom Group. We partner with approximately 2,000 hotels in 50-odd countries for their technology solutions. I'm very pleased to introduce a very heavy-hitting panel this morning. We are trying to create wow in the discussion and the debate as well, and I think we're well equipped with the luminaries to my left to be able to do that. The plan for today is to discuss a number of themes. There will be some slides. The slides are really not meant as a formal agenda, but really as steering points for the discussion and the debate. I would like to make this, as it is a panel session, interactive. There are question forms going around, so Melanie has got them over there. If any of you would like to ask a question, please feel free to fill in one of those or indeed to raise your hand. There is also a wandering mic as well, where we can hopefully interact with the audience during the course of the discussion. I think the next step here is to introduce the panel. Gentlemen, if you would like to tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do. If we start with Kevin, please.
It's Kevin Underwood. I'm Vice President, Global Leader for Leisure and Culture for AECOM. We're a firm of designers, architects, engineers, cost consultants, landscape architects, so full service on design in most countries throughout the world.
I'm Frank Wolf, CEO of Hospitality Financial and Technology Professionals. We are the professional association for CIOs and CFOs around the world, and I'm also known as a road warrior. I have about 5 million miles and about 2,000 hotel nights, give or take, under my belt. So,
welcome to the hotels. Markus Lehnert, I'm VP for Marriott International, with a wide array of brands, old and new, established and emerging, and look after Central Europe. Don't travel just as much as you do.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Bolton, CEO of U. I travel hardly at all. I have a lot on my plate in the U business. We're a business that's very much rooted in design and branding the residential sector. We set up a hotel operational business about 2 years ago now and are forging ahead with that, bringing all the U brand brings to it in terms of design, furnishing, and so on and so forth, and also capital investment, because we've got a capital arm too. We have our first hotel open now in Istanbul, and we have a strong development pipeline going forward, so we're very excited to take that forward. But I'm a relative newcomer to the hotel industry. I'm a real estate professional by background, and I'm looking forward to the debate this morning.
Very good. Thank you to you all. As you can see, there's a real cross-section of different protagonists with different experiences and professional context here. Okay, back to the subject of discussion today. Is wow a business opportunity? That is really, I guess, the fundamental core of what we're going to discuss. And is it affordable and scalable, especially in a brand environment where one has to roll out multiple units across countries or across the world? 10 to 15 years ago, we, the guest, the consumer, if you like, used to marvel at the luxury, the design, and certainly the technology aspects within the hotel guest bedroom. But the reality today is that model has completely flipped and gone on its head. We as guests are often frustrated, and I know members of this panel are too today, at the lack of interactivity, connectivity that we can experience sometimes in hotels. So maybe the question should be, is the lack of wow a business threat as much as is wow an opportunity? So the question therefore sort of necessitates, is wow a differentiator, and is this something that we can monetize? To get the creative juices flowing, before we hand over to the panel, I want to share an experience I had with you at a hotel I selected at random in Hong Kong last week. I stayed at the Indigo Hong Kong Island. This is about a 200-bedroom, fairly new build property. And I was given a room on the 25th floor. What I didn't know as I was taking the elevator up to the room was that it was a corner room, and 2 of the walls were actually windows. And as I walked into the room and opened the door for the first time, it tripped a switch somewhere that sent a command to a device somewhere that gave the curtains, which were electric, a command to automatically give a slow reveal. So as I walked into the room, I looked across and I had the view that you can partially see there from the 25th floor across the Hong Kong skyline to the Bank of China building. I literally dropped my bag as I came into the room. You know, the wow effect was instant, it was immediate. There are undoubtedly more luxurious, better, more well-equipped hotels in Hong Kong, but you know what? Next time I go back to Hong Kong, I'm pretty certain I'm going to see if they've got a decent room going when I make my booking. What was most interesting during my stay, and I probably shouldn't say this in front of my CEO here, is that in the 4.5 days that I was there, I didn't actually switch on the TV once. And I think in sort of technology and wow discussions, we tend to focus heavily on just the TV as the driver of wow within the room. Unquestionably, it plays an important part, but the reality is there's so much more to it, as I hope I just encapsulated in my little introduction there, than just putting the latest, biggest, flattest TV screen that you possibly can. And I think that's reflected in the nature of the business trip that I was on. I didn't really have time for TV, but I needed good connectivity. I needed plenty of plug sockets. It sounds very simple, but how many times have you been in a hotel and there's an anti-wow by not being able to plug in all your devices that we all carry today? What I'm going to do is now open this question up to the floor. And maybe, Frank, if we can start with you, is to describe a recent wow that you've had, either from clever design, from construction, from technology, or a combination of all of the three. And I'd like to go across the panel with that.
Okay. Actually, mine is a real simple one. I stayed at Interlaken Resorts in Shenzhen, and they have a electrical outlet that will take European, American, Middle Eastern, the whole gamut. Didn't matter what you wanted to plug in, you could plug it in. You just had a little, like a clock face and turned it, and what a great thing.
Marcus, thank you.
Sorry, I just need to
Sorry,
put
Chris.
this up.
It's
Yeah.
okay, Frank, don't worry.
Well, I think the hotel business is something which is fairly holistic. It's not just about product, it's not just about technology, it's about the overall feeling that not so much when you enter a room, but what do you leave behind when you exit a room. And I had an experience which somewhat unsettled me, because I spent about 13 years of my life in London hotels, most of them the ones we know. And last week I stayed for 3 nights at the Edition. And at first when I came into the room I thought, nice, but nothing special. But I stayed there, and that was the difference. I found that this hotel has got a subtle approach. It's not in your face, but as you discover it, as you take the soap out of its package, as you use the water, as you use the shower, as you sit on the bed, you feel it is 100% exactly what you need. You discover it. You find out the same thing carries through in the public areas. The service is there. Yes, a glass of wine is expensive, but actually, if you go in there, you get a glass of water first of all put in front of you with the same smile at no cost. So the whole package is extremely impressive, and I elected it to be my favorite hotel in London, and that is to say something. It's the Edition.
Chris, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose you'd expect me, coming from a business that is heavily into design, to say the wow factor for me was about design. I stayed on a business trip in Miami last year and took my wife and youngest child with me. They were lucky enough to come on that particular trip, and we stayed in the SLS Hotel in South Beach. And the impact of that on them was very interesting, really, as people who don't travel on business, clearly. It was really that the room is very compact, or the rooms there are very compact and lacked wow. Certainly technology there wasn't a factor for it, but the design of the public areas, particularly the bar area, that opened up to the pool area as well, and there's a further pool and then access to the beach. The whole package there, the way it had been thought through, the way it was eclectically designed, it's obviously designed by one of our shareholders and designers, Philippe Stark, but the impact it had on them, that was wow factor for them. It was, wow, Dad, look at this. You know, my youngest son had never stayed anywhere quite like that before. And where we were all underwhelmed by the room, certainly the public areas created that wow factor, and that was very important for them and that trip. It made the trip for them.
Kevin, thank you.
As a designer, we like to create memories. No longer is it good enough for people, holidaymakers, to take home photographs. They like to take home memories. And I think one of the nicest memories I've had recently is in the Maldives. There they have outdoor bathrooms, very, very simple. But you shower outside and everything is to hand, the towels, the soaps, the creams, all to hand. That was an amazing wow factor for me and a great memory. I think the opposite of that is in the hotel I'm staying here. I have a phone, I have an iPad, and I have a laptop computer, all of which need charging. There wasn't enough sockets in the room. I had to move the bedside cabinet to get to the socket to charge my phone. And the internet didn't work in the room. So that's a bad memory.
So in essence,
I won't be going back there.
So in essence, the technology wow becomes the technology anti-wow in that
Yep.
in that situation.
Absolutely.
It's a big turn off for future business.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for sharing those. I want to put a concept, I think, to Marcus probably first as an operator here. Every hotel company has concept rooms, technology rooms. They always seem to be one-offs. There's a great hotel that does this, maybe the Indigo in Hong Kong Island, but how many other Indigos do the same thing? And you very, very infrequently see a repeat of that high-tech concept across territories, across different brands within a hotel group. Why do you think we as an industry, I think, fail to achieve that scale, to get that replication?
Well, I think you try to do today something what you experienced yesterday for tomorrow. And with technology moving as fast as it does, that's not really going to work. I remember a few years ago we had a big craze. We tried to roll out these power bars on the desks. And we had suddenly more costs and we wanted to change standards and everything. For the last few years, nobody has talked about this anymore. The same thing goes with, the televisions. What can the television do? Now we have all the flat screens. We couldn't have them on the wall at first because the noise traveled too badly. Then we couldn't have them on the wall because the speaker's actually behind it. Now we're solving all of that. The technology is moving so fast, and I think we should perhaps move away from trying to give high-tech to a customer that he doesn't need. I think a special effect like you had in your Hong Kong Indigo is wonderful. I think that really creates a memory. It may be different on the third floor. And perhaps you don't have a technical room like that. But I think people have their own technical devices. People are very independent and traveling with all of that, some with more, some with less. They may not need a concierge anymore because they have an iPad. They know which restaurant they want to go to. They know how they get a limo service booked. So the hotel becomes much more a facilitator. And it's much more important to have a reliable, high-speed Wi-Fi, to have the power sockets, and perhaps have the spare parts if the people who travel with this have forgotten theirs at the last hotel.
Okay. Frank, maybe if I can come to you next. I mean, you're a man who's traveled more than all of us combined in this room, I think. You are also very much somebody with a clear knowledge and experience in technology. What do you think on this subject? What's your view on the world?
Well, I think that the simpler things are, in a lot of cases, for the road warriors especially, the better they are. I mean, the first thing I do when I check into a hotel is plug in all my devices. And there's nothing any more frustrating than trying to pull the bed out to try to find the plug, or actually having to dismount the nightstand that actually hangs on the wall that the plugs are there. I mean, literally, I travel with Swiss Army knife that has all kinds of tools because I'm always doing this.
This is you.
This is me. And so, you know, to me, I want great high-speed internet. You always hear, should it be free or not free? And as a traveler myself, I think that that's the wrong argument. I think it should be, does it work or not? Because when I stay in a hotel, I try to get as much as I can done because I have free time at night that if I don't get it done, I'm going to go home and I'm going to have to work on my own time. So the anti-wow for me is if I'm staying in a hotel that doesn't have good Wi-Fi, they're stealing family time from me as a road warrior.
Yeah.
So instead of being a good experience, it causes a resentment. So I'm all about good Wi-Fi, whether you have to pay for it or not, lots of electrical outlets, and you know, I have a relatively new wife, 5 years now, and that has given me a total appreciation for the lady traveler because there's so many simple things that from a design point of view or just from a convenience point of view that the ladies seem to need that I never realized being a guy, even though we built concept rooms as our association. You know, the desk space. If you don't have, I mean the bathroom space, if you don't have enough space in the bathroom, what's to say that you can't have one of those little suction cup shelves that's hidden in the drawer that it's like, hey, here, pop this up. I mean, simple things.
So keep it simple and do it well, I think, is the message.
Yes.
And I think you're not alone in that. I think that's reflected in industry surveys. I know that the latest J.D. Power survey as a guest room amenity, connectivity that both you and Kevin have spoken about has just rocketed up there over the course of the last 5 years to the point where it is the number 2 amenity, I think, in terms of importance for guests today. So clearly the delivery across that network of an up-to-date service
Can I mention a
is
pet
key.
hate? Lighting, light switches.
Yes.
I have one hotel where I sometimes have to stay, and there is one particular light, and I, to this day, do not know how this light is switched off. I can tell you, in the evening, I'm done with everything. I want to switch off the lights. This one, it's a very cute light next to the minibar. Make sure you find the bottle opener for the minibar stuff. At some stage, I'm frustrated. I touch every button. The light is off, but I don't know which button it was. And this happened to me, without fail, 4 times. And I don't have the nerve to actually study this and try to get into the electrical charts of this building. You want to have one button where everything goes off and one button where everything goes on. Ideally, you want to have it near the bed so that you don't break your leg going into bed then afterwards. Very simple things, but they create a comfort which you may want to have. And let's forget, people are not at home in hotels. This is an alien environment to them. The more people feel at home, the faster they feel at home, the more loyal these customers will be. We have one brand which is sometimes, it's not a designer brand. It's Marriott. It's our core brand. Yeah. We have a lot of people who say, this is my living room I travel with. Because I come into the room, I know where the iron is, I know how it works because it's the same in Singapore than it is in London, and it works, and I know how the coffee machine works. I don't have to learn any new routines. I actually want to just get going and do my work. That's what I'm there for. It's the road warrior syndrome. And yes, I may have with my family the experience, I want to go to a hotel, I have a glass of champagne at check-in, and then I enjoy the artwork on the way to the elevator, but that's a different story. We have different needs there.
Okay. I think that leads nicely on to the next question, and Chris, maybe if I can come to you on this one. Hoteliers obviously like to look after their guests. They like to create a sense of differentiation, a wow factor. The trouble is, I guess, or the challenge is wow universal? What are your preferences versus my preferences? Are they the same? And I think it must be very difficult for you as somebody coming into this space now, albeit with a very strong design pedigree and background, who now becomes an operator, it's a brave new world, to try and create, on a technology level at least, a wow factor that everybody's going to appreciate. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's very dangerous to rely on technology to create the wow factor. I think we've already heard that clearly there are some things which are essential. Wireless connectivity is clearly to every traveller, I think every user of a hotel, very essential. Obviously, we've heard about the access to power outlets as well. But that's not about wow, they're essential items. In terms of the example you gave in Hong Kong, that is a clever use of somebody coming up with the idea, yes, there's a great panoramic view of Hong Kong, let's give people that high impact when they enter the room. Again, you can't create that in a back street in Birmingham or perhaps even in the hotel here. So there's a challenge there. I think wow can be universal, and I think that is done by design, and you're using clever design in the environment you're working with. Obviously, yes, in Hong Kong they had the opportunity to do what they did there. When you're in the actual room itself, then clearly we all have tastes, and we can't always cater to people's taste, and therefore people would go and have brand favourites because they like the particular look and feel of one brand over another one. And I think that's what you've got to be very careful about without creating something that's too bland as well. Because if you do that, then yes, it might feel good for everybody. They're not going to be offended perhaps by the sort of design, by the use of the colours, the use of textures, but they're not going to be excited by it either. And it is a challenge. Obviously in the residential market, we've spent a lot of time around the world making sure it's right. And I think what we've found really is that you can adapt what is contemporary design, but then you've got to give it local soul. And I think, when people are traveling, they like to get that impression of the room they're in, the spaces they're in, has some sort of local connection. And there are clever ways you can do that with the use of artwork, with the use of images, with the use of some of the sort of the dressing of the rooms as well, to make people feel they're really connected with the city or the town or the country that they're in, as apart from something that just looks the same wherever you happen to go, which I think is where people sort of lose it really. But I think, to me, it's the technology is really about the essential items. And when we're looking at it in the home sense, obviously it's very much easier for us to do that then. I mean, I think for hotels, if they start introducing too much technology, the likes of the TVs and whatever you want to do to sort of wow the customer, the investment required to do that, of course, as we've heard, technology moves so very quickly going forward. The investment, you've got to keep replacing it. You've got to have a continual replacement program, because what wows the customer today won't be wowing them in 12 months' time, 24 months' time. One of the examples I've got from the hotel I'm staying in here is there's a docking station for an iPhone. It's for an iPhone 4. I've got an iPhone 5. I cannot use the docking station. Now at home, I can just go and buy one of those if I've got that problem, and that's an annoyance with Apple, but I can buy one, maybe two for home. For a hotelier, it could be 300 they've got to buy for the room. So that's a very expensive way of trying to create a sort of wow factor that, as we're back to this sort of anti-wow. So I think you've got to focus on the physical environment, give it that sort of local soul, think about the sort of textures, the finishes, the colours that don't offend, but make people feel sort of comfortable in the environment we're in. Now, obviously, in the public areas and hotels, you can create things which will excite people. Maybe they don't sort of probably sometimes get it, but it can be different. But when you're in the actual room itself, yeah, you can create an environment, I believe, that makes people feel like they're sitting in their own sort of living room.
I think wow as well, I mean, maybe Kevin, if we can come to you now, is not just about what you can see in the room. It's not just about, the TV screen or the connectivity. I think increasingly as we go to a more network-centric world, where hotels are looking for information and preferences for their guests to tailor the experience, where we have a growing green commitment, where there is a requirement to reduce carbon footprint and energy consumption. Tell us a little bit about, some projects or your philosophy on some of the behind-the-scenes wow from the construction and build process that your organisation is very much involved in?
Well, first of all, picking up on Chris's point, some of the wow things that we do are free for a start. So not every bit of wow has to cost money. So, for example, we're working on a beautiful project in Montenegro. There we're recreating a Venetian hill town. And that's about creating a beautiful set of views. So it starts with the entry sequence. So as you come down the hill, we've positioned the road and the alignment of the road such that you get a wonderful view of the bay. That then closes down and we come into the hotel. You go through the lobby and then you get another wow view. It closes down into the village and you go through a whole series of spatial sequences until you get to your guest room. You open the window and then you get another wow view. All of that is free of charge. It's just us positioning things in certain ways in 3 dimensions to make sure that you get all of those wows. So that's one side of it. I think there are a number of things that we're now doing behind the scenes, back of house, to meet the growing need to be sustainable. So we're doing a lot of things to reduce energy. We're working on a beautiful project in the Maldives where we have to be extremely sustainable with an island community. We have a reef that goes down 2,000 metres there. And at the bottom of that reef, the temperature of the water is 3 degrees centigrade. Of course, above ground is 30 degrees centigrade, and we need lots of air conditioning. But we can use that coolth within the water to reduce the air conditioning load on the building. Now, that costs money, and it's completely invisible, but more and more guests are demanding that green approach. In Doha, for instance, we've done a city regeneration project there where we've specifically positioned buildings to capture the prevailing wind. This is free of charge again, but we have coded it such that the architects, we've specified how much solid on the building versus glass to avoid this glass greenhouse effect that you see so many buildings in the Middle East creating these huge energy requirements to cool the buildings. So that's kind of free. The other big component is water saving. We're doing rainwater harvesting. We're recycling grey water. All of these things, yes, they cost money, but they are contributing to the green equation that more and more of the guests are requiring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Frank, I think you had a point there. Were you looking to?
Well, I was just going to say, one thing that I think it's important to convey is about a universal wow is the demographics. Notwithstanding brand standards and things like that, our members ask a lot, how can I get the biggest bang out of the technology buck, which I think we're getting ready to segue into, but it's kind of like being the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. It's like, well, which way do you want to go? What is the demographic? Because we've talked here about road warriors, we've talked about families, we've talked about beautiful resorts, and in a lot of cases, the technology needs are going to be totally different. Chris and I were talking earlier, and he was talking about his 12-year-old son. I have 2 teenagers myself. They don't want to talk to anybody. They want to, they're into their mode, and you see one of the brands has recently come out, and your room key is going to be your phone.
Yeah.
Or it already is your phone, and so you're not even going to stop at the front desk. You're just going to go right through. So I really do believe that it can be universal, that you can have wows, but I think that the wows are not going to be universal themselves.
Okay.
It does depend on the target audience, doesn't it? And that can be very different, whether they're staying on business, they're a road warrior, they're on holiday, and like. But I think just picking up on the point about my 12-year-old son who doesn't want to talk to me, his headphones are in, he's playing the Xbox, he's talking to his friends on that. And I think as that generation comes through, in sort of 10 years' time when he's actually staying in hotels, what will he want? That's probably one of the things that challenges me and probably stimulates us all pretty intellectually, is thinking about how are we going to deal with that? Are we dealing with a generation that because they've been brought up with technology, most of us, I think probably all of us in this room, have sort of inherited technology as it's sort of, we've seen it grow. We've got into it to greater or lesser degrees. We've made it part of our daily lives. Those kids, from the minute they were born, they've been involved in technology, and therefore, how are they going to sort of interact? Maybe they don't want that sort of human interaction when they check in at a hotel. Maybe they're quite happy to collect the sort of room key on their phone and not talk to anybody and go straight through. At 12, it probably would suit him. Maybe at 22, it might not. I don't know. But it's going to be some interesting factors, I think, in terms of that sort of generation now coming through, that it's embedded in them. Maybe it will be actually literally embedded in them by the time they're sort of
but
in their 20s.
it's a matter of choice. And
Of course,
the minute you want to talk to is when you actually stand in front of your room and your phone is empty. There's no power.
Yeah.
You can't get into your room. Then you talk to people. So, sorry, but hotels are people business. And the people factor is there. And the people factor is also something which can actually create the wow. That can stimulate real loyalty, I think. And there is nothing that's going to change that. And a very pleasant smile in a budget hotel can do just the trick as a super service in a 5-star. It's a relationship, if we look at the hotel product, it's a relationship, physical product versus service element, which changes. In a budget hotel, you have perhaps 20% service related, is the overall experience, and 80% is the physical product. If you are in the Maldives at a wonderful resort, you have 60% of it service related. That is the product, and 40% is the physical. And this is the thing you need to capture. And there is some things which in a budget hotel you'd be floored if you get it, and in a 5-star hotel you expect it. That's why 5-star hotels are extremely difficult to manage and consistently manage well, and budget hotels are a much simpler formula. But people want choices. They may not need great service on this occasion. They just want to have a room for the night because they're tired.
The other thing, of course, within a multi-brand group such as Marriott is your guests don't just stay in the same brand segment. They switch up and down segments, I would imagine, depending on the type of stay that they're on, sure, with regularity.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is quite interesting because that's also the way you begin to capture the next generation. I mean, we have now a year ago, we've launched our Moxie brand, hence this somewhat aggressive tie. This time we came up with the public areas. Next year we come up with the real hotel, and we're using that to actually approach that generation, the headphone and Xbox guys, because we think they also need to sleep and they also need to eat and drink, and they therefore need hotels, and we'd like them to be our customers of tomorrow. It's a great testing base as well for us.
Yeah. But looking at Moxie as a brand, and I think this is a good example. We saw the mock-up rooms last year,
yeah,
which were just around the corner here, if I recall. Been in much discussion with Marriott on that. It's actually a very simple formula in terms of what goes into the room itself. It's connectivity, power, a decent TV, and that's pretty much it on a technology level, on a consumer level. So it's a very simple blueprint. Chris, what about you for you hotels? What's your technology blueprint? Where, to skip a couple of slides here, all build or renovation projects have a finite budget. Where is your organization going to spend its non-design money on this?
Yeah, we agonized over the whole issue of technology a couple of years ago when we were developing our U2 brand, which is very much targeted at a sort of 20 to 30, well, sort of 20 to 40 something sort of audience. And referred to as 3-star, but really it's developed now a sort of personality of its own. And we're referring to it as affordable luxury, so it's a boutique sort of offering. And the way we saw it with technologies, we couldn't, at that point, 2 years ago, make any decision on what technology we were putting in because it was moving so fast. But what we have subsequently decided and probably sort of formulated then was we do need to keep it simple. So you're hearing what you're doing with Moxie. It is back to that. It's what are the basic essentials that you have to create. And I touched on it earlier. You've got to have connectivity. You've got to have power. Yes, there has got to be a TV. Everyone seems to want a TV, but you don't have to sort of overboard on that. But for us, the whole ethos of what we're trying to do in hotels It's clearly design, well, that's what we're rooted in, but it's service. And I think, at the end of the day, we all remember good service. Even those of us who might check out of a hotel today and go and complain to the team there about the fact we couldn't connect because the Wi-Fi wasn't working, if they actually listen to our complaint, deal with it in the best way, you will remember that, even because it's very often a great way to sort of give good service is when somebody has a bad experience. It's how you deal with it. Lots and lots of examples of that. And I think for us, it is very much what we've sort of coined the term human luxury. It's about looking after people. Yes, you've got to get the environment right. Yes, you've got to give them the bare essentials in the room, but it's about how they connect with people. And, yes, I'm talking about sort of another generation coming through. I agree with Marcus too. Those people, when the phone doesn't work, they are going to have to interact when they get older with other human beings at some stage. And I think human beings have that general need. We do want to interact. And I think that's to me, the real nub of this, is you've got to have that sort of human touch and give good service.
You want to create loyalty as a hotel operator. And one of my teachers at Cornell, Robert Perry, told a story about the placard button. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know how many people of you know what a placard button is. I didn't know it. But it's the little button here in the middle, which nobody needs. And this guy, Robert Perry, had a shirt where this button was missing. And it went through hundreds of hotel laundries and came back. He never missed this button. It wasn't there. It wasn't needed. Yeah? So in Singapore, in one hotel where he couldn't stay at the Shangri-La, he had to stay at another hotel. He got this back, put it on, and this button was there. So suddenly, someone had put a 2-cent button back on this. He said he never stayed at another hotel in Singapore except this one. Now that's loyalty.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's service, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're sort of drawing to a conclusion here. I think there's a picture forming, and I'd love to give the audience in a few moments the opportunity to start raising questions for the last 10 minutes or so of this panel session. So really, as a parting shot, I would like to ask each of you in turn, really where your focus is, where your top tips are. It seems to me, and the organization I work for is a content provider as well as a provider of technology. And it seems to me that the road warrior today, or even just, the casual visitor coming into a hotel today, already has his or her own content sources, already has his or her own social networks, and is looking for, the sort of things that I think we've discussed. It seems to be heading towards a less is more approach. There is no investment return on trying to equip the room with everything, but spend on key focus areas that make our lives as hotel guests easy. Kevin, anything to add on that as your concluding thoughts and passing comments?
I would say invest in good quality design. That doesn't mean to say that you need to spend extra. That would be my top tip.
Okay, thank you. Frank, same question.
Well, from a technology point of view, I guess, I think that the one thing that I find that needs the most work in any hotel room is the bed. There just has not been that many. We have these great beds that have all these comfy quilts, pillows, but the bed itself is the one thing I think is the industry's, short leg, if you will.
Okay. Marcus.
Well, I would say that technology moves so fast. Make sure that as a provider, you are a facilitator, that this technology can be utilized by the guest, that they bring their updated iPhone 5 or whatever, that you just need to have the appropriate facilities for them to use it. And again, I come back to the addition. It was very simple. There were 2 sockets, and in one of them was one international socket stuck. And there was a little USB stick up there. So I could do everything with this. I didn't need anything else. It was extremely simple.
I've got 4 points, I guess. I think the first one is know your audience, who you're sort of appealing to. That can differ, as we've talked about, in terms of whether traveling, on holiday, whether they're traveling in business, so forth. And keep it simple. for me, in terms of the room experience. Design cleverly. It doesn't have to cost more money, as Kevin said. And I think for me, the most important thing is give good service. Focus on giving that good service.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your contributions this morning. Are there any questions from the floor? Plenty. The lady on the left there.
I'm Mary Gostelow. I find a certain conflict between wow and at home, because actually when we get home we don't go wow unless one's wife, if one has a wife, has cut her hair or something, because you're home and you know. Now, I travel over 300 nights a year and I want to feel at home. I want everything to work. I don't go wow when I have an international socket, because I'm sorry, I expect one. And if I have a button off and I know which hotel that was that sewed your button on, what I want is that beautiful view that makes me say wow. And what I want, actually, as we've heard from Kevin, I want things that don't cost money. I want something that is well thought out. And I want perhaps the perfect fruit, the fruit that I like. And that brings us into the importance of knowing your audience. And in today's world, with all these complicated CRM systems, it is amazing how many hotel groups have in their systems what somebody likes and what he doesn't like. And very seldom does it actually work. And the hotel group that can actually get it right is the one that is going to get my loyalty, certainly.
So that's it. So that's interesting. That's a focus on something we haven't touched on in detail today, and that's back of house technology as opposed to front of house or construction technology. Frank or Marcus, maybe would either of you like to comment on it? I think on the very valid points put forward.
I absolutely agree. I must say, I mean, if you have a budget hotel, you're not going to look out on Sydney Opera House. That's certainly. But it doesn't mean that you cannot experience the care and the assessment of what is this customer like. What does this customer actually need at this? Are they more interested in an experience because they just happen to be on their honeymoon? Or is this really the customer who has got a very tight schedule, they have no time, they need to have everything done, and you perhaps say, just stay here, we put your bag upstairs, you go off to your meeting. Something like that. But that is... we're back to the human element in a hotel. And all the systems you can have guest histories as long as you want. I know of one lady who at Claridge's always got a glass of orange juice when she arrived. And she said, I ordered this once, but I actually hate orange juice. This particular day I wanted it. So, it always takes the human element to judge. Someone needs to make a judgment, approach, and see this customer needs that. That's the essence of hospitality. If you can get that, wonderful. Can you get it in a large group? It's very, very difficult. We try.
I think one of the simplest ones I've experienced is arriving in Doha. Arrived at the airport. They knew I was coming. They'd arranged the car, but they made a phone call from the airport to the hotel. So when the junior guy on the door greeted me, it was, "Hello, Mr. Underwood." And that was a bit of a wow for me, but it was just a simple phone call for them.
There's a gentleman halfway along on the right there.
I got the same question for both Chris and Marcus. What's the wow about you two, and what's the wow about Moxie?
You want to go first?
To jump in first, I think I alluded to it earlier, Guy. For us, it's about service. It's about human luxury. Human luxury is interaction with people. Yes, there'll be a wow of design. We're focused very much on that. Yes, it's about keeping it simple, as I said earlier. But at the end of the day, we're going to be very focused on that service and using some of the sort of back-of-house technology we've talked about in terms of understanding what the customer needs.
But how will you be able to differentiate yourself from your competitors through service? Tell me.
I think the key thing there is giving that sort of human touch with a hint of humour. I think there are certain things you can do to make it subtly different. And I think we're going to be leveraging heavily off getting the design right, of course, but we're going to be very focused on choosing the right people who get us overall as a lifestyle brand, because obviously we've got a wealth of experience around the world working with different nationalities and in different projects, different countries. And I think it's just a matter of how we connect with those customers. So it'd be a selection of both the GMs, that they get it and understand the whole you ethos. So not just from a sort of hotel perspective, but the whole thing, because we're very much a lifestyle brand. And we're moving that forward now as we've really transitioned from a business which is B2B to B2C in the consumer space. So that's what we're going to be doing, is getting people who really connect, understand what we're about as a lifestyle brand, and then can connect with other human beings.
Now, I want to be a little bit humble, because we don't have a Moxie just yet. We talk about it, we don't have one yet. So be patient with us. But we have a clear vision of what we want to do, and hopefully we can translate that with too many errors into reality. With Moxie, I think we will create a hotel which is a little bit different than because it doesn't fit into the categories. It sort of breaks out of budget. It is in lifestyle, it is a little bit in budget, it's a little bit in 4-star. You have a above-size television, to stick with technology here. You have 42-inch television, which for a 17-square-meter room is certainly extremely large. You have a Marriott bedding, which is extremely opulent for a budget product. And you have a grid, a room width, which is actually also more 4-star and gives you the feeling of space. You will not have the Bank of China outside your window. And the window is also going to be normal size. You will not stand at the window in this hotel. But you have a cleverly designed and laid out public area where you have both the quiet zones and the more activated zones separated from each other. And in the rooms, the carnival stops. You close the door and you have a room where you can feel comfortable, which is simple. And that is what people want. So you can live in this room, but you can have party downstairs as much as you want. Up in the room, it's tranquil. The other wow thing about Moxie is it's the greenest hotel you can ever have, because the semi-modular building construction is based on cross-laminated timber. That means we bind CO2 and we don't set it free as you do with a conventional build. And with a 200-bedroom, this is the Technical University of Munich has calculated this, with a 200-room Moxie, you bind so much CO2 that you can drive with a car 15.4 million kilometers. So there's a little bit of a wow factor for you.
Thank you very much.
There's a gentleman on there you go.
Thank you so much. I actually also have a question for Chris. I just took as the basic subjects of this presentation that the surprise is in simplicity. So when looking at this, I think it fits most in basic and upper business hotels. Also because mostly luxury attractions, luxury hotels, they look a lot for attractions, for exclusivity. So is it easier for the basic and upscale hotels to actually wow these guests in terms of service, basic rooms, CRM?
Yeah, I think if you're sort of a more budget, sort of lower cost option, I think there is an opportunity to wow people, because they don't expect perhaps the service you might give them. They probably don't expect perhaps the environment you've created. So I think that enables you to do that. I think when you're at the luxury end, yes, it is far more difficult to offer something that beats the competition quite clearly, because there is a higher expectation there. They're going to expect that service there. So it's therefore, it's sort of focusing on the detail. You know, it's getting to know your customer. We've talked about sort of the segmentation. We've talked about understanding who your audience is. It's getting to know them and what they do want. And then making that connection between the technology that enables you to do that and connect with the customer based on their sort of their buying needs, their buying patterns, their history. But making that human connection with them as well to make sure you deliver it right. So yes, if you know they've got a history of ordering the glass of orange we talked about, that you actually don't just naturally just produce that, you actually talk to them as well, and you know, just check that and test it, because it can go horribly wrong if you rely too heavily on the sort of a CRM to tell you that.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Well, I think there's a lady down at the front here.
I just have a question. my wow effect coming into the room, I thought, where are the women on the panel? 52% of the population are women, and we need some more women on the panel. And we have some great women hoteliers, architects, and designers. So I think to have another different view, other than big companies, that would have been very pleasant to hear a different view, and especially to see a woman on the panel. Thank you.
Here, here. I agree with that. 50%, more than 50% of our team are females. And that's a big part of our business, and I think it's a key part to that.
There's a lady also in the front here.
I have the same concern. I travel quite a bit. My name is Guinness Chillen, and in some of the hotels, I visualize a sign on the door saying no entry for women, because nothing has been thought that a woman would enter. And when we're traveling for business, I travel with my spouse sometimes, my son, and it's a double room, but the facilities are not double. It's only for one person, and that is on the job. So everyone is talking about the client CRM, the customer, but I think the women are excluded within the context. And I feel this in resort hotels as well. So I would highly recommend to have women more within the decision-making environment. And I do agree, thank you. It is very disappointing when you see that you are ignored, left out of the party. This is not made for you, it's not intended for you. And it is, psychologically, it's not a good feeling. Very, very seldom I come into a hotel and I say, wow.
You have quite a good group, like a Ferndale. This is really good touch.
I have to.
And it's a warm environment, but you don't hardly find it.
Frank.
I have to say, now that you bring this topic up, one of the wows that I really had that was all about the people was on the way from the States, we stayed over at one of the airport hotels. And as we were checking in, we were asking for a different kind of room. And the desk clerk said to my wife, we're going to put you in what she called a woman-friendly room. Now, I'd never heard that term before. And she went on to say what made that room women-friendly. Robes, cosmetic mirror, and, she had a whole list. And, to me, it was like, great. But, in thinking about when I saw Emily's face, to her, that was a big wow.
Really? I find that offensive. I'm very sorry, but I would find that terribly offensive. I'm sorry, Kevin, I did try to stay quiet.
A number of our staff are females.
But I would find that highly offensive. I travel a lot for work, I agree. I think I can carry it without the mic. I agree, there's a number of things that we basically get wrong in a hotel room for a female traveler. But they should be right as much for a male traveler as a female traveler.
I agree.
The lack of light in my bathroom to do makeup on.
That's helpful for men.
Have you exactly. You need to shave. Also those little creases that you otherwise can't see. So
I think we agree.
That's not a female-male issue, that's an issue of getting some basics right. And I expect, whatever time I check in, that room to be right, whether I'm male or female.
But it still gets me whenever I walk into a bathroom and there's this plaque that says
Shavers.
only.
I think that's actually quite an interesting point, because we're all talking about Generation X and Y. What we seem to perhaps forget a little bit is that we also have a change in the business world, that a lot of women are actually returning earlier and being in the business world and being very successful in there. That may see a change. That may see a change which may require some adjustment. I've had the case that my wife came into a hotel room which I thought was quite nice, and she said, "This is very masculine. I'm sure in this company there's only men who design this." So, yes. Well,
I just came back from Turkey. One comment I really like to make. The Turkish woman, very well, she leads a really big Congress center. She said, behind every successful woman is a respectful man. I think that was a very good decision.
Thank you.
Guys, sorry, I'm just surprised on a technology panel that I don't need the mic. That thank you. That you didn't discuss mobile, number one, because I think mobile is so prevalent in the industry. And Simon, I'm with Quadriga, so we're friendly competitors.
Sure.
Very surprised that you guys missed a huge point in the industry. Number one, maybe for next year. Number two, I think from a WOW point of view that you also have missed is discussing languages. I think as more and more people from foreign countries are traveling, as English-speaking people, we are totally spoiled, but we have to ensure that as the Chinese and people from other countries are traveling, collectively as an industry, we do something to ensure that we are welcoming them in their own language. Through the CRM, I can tell you at Quadriga, it's the number one thing that I'm pushing for, and I'm responsible for our global sales, is languages and making people feel at home. So you guys have missed it completely.
Yeah, I would say that there are plenty of subject matters that would need extrapolation over a technology debate that frankly would go on for 2 days. So there was never the intention to try and to cover every angle on here. I think to return just on those 2 points specifically, I think on languages, the operators amongst us will update there. But I see, in European hotels, I see Chinese speakers as an example, and multiple other language speakers. I see the inverse when I go to Asia. On a technology level, all the platforms, frankly, today that these guys stipulate that your company or my company or any other company out there in the world have to be capable of handling multiple languages, not just in terms of the interface and the design, but also increasingly in the support of those services. And that, frankly, is a given. Without that, you don't get to play with the likes of Marriott. That's a fact of it.
Well, actually, I can tell you that the M-commerce is something very interesting, because in 2012, it was $700 million business. Last year, it doubled.
Yep.
So, and we see that progressing.
Can I just say on languages, when the Peninsula Paris opens in August this year, they will program it so that, let's say, a Chinese speaker goes up to his room and all the language in his room on all the signs is going to be in Chinese.
Yes.
And I think that's an industry first.
Yes, and it's available today on systems. It's typically driven by the PMS system. Where I think it's not implemented is capture of the correct. We as an industry tend to go to defaults, and defaults will typically be English in the UK and the US, and German in this part of the world, or it may vary from brand. So there is a capability there for delivery of exactly that sort of level of personalization.
Yeah, the Peninsula, Hong Kong is that way now. They've already implemented that, and they're really into the tablets as well, so that you can even pick up the tablet to operate the television, and it's in the language, the native language of the guest.
Okay. I think maybe one last question before we break for lunch. Lady there.
It's not a question, it's just another aspect. One thing that really ticks me off is, and I know it's not possible in all destinations, sometimes you really don't want to do it, but if I cannot open the window and I have to live with an air condition that's actually, because the hotel wants to save money, is blowing very warm air into the room, then I cannot have a good night's rest. That is the thing that ticks me more off than not having mobile connectivity or Wi-Fi coverage. So that's just the feedback. Fresh air is the wow effect that I have at home, which I really expect at a hotel.
Thank you. One last question from...
Sorry, could I just state that I found this really interesting today, because we seem to be going through a number of issues and they're really far away from each other, and there seems to be a stream that desperately wants to talk about the technology and implementing the latest technology and how it can benefit us, but then there's a stream of comments that's indicating that we seem to be getting some of the basics wrong. And if we're talking about a wow factor, then surely it's about getting the basics right to begin with.
I wholeheartedly agree, you know. As a technologist, I don't know what the technologies will be like in 5, 10 years' time, not even 3 years' time in some cases. But what I do know is that those technologies will need certain networks, infrastructures to operate on. And the importance for hoteliers is to get those right investment decisions now to gear up for what's coming down the line, rather than try and retrofit to adapt to a technology very expensively and very awkwardly later on down the track. And I think this is why, to answer your question, the technology panel comes into IHIF in the first place, is to get technology as a concept as more of a strategic investment decision and into the strategic thinking, rather than as an afterthought, which it has been. Because now, whether it's on CRM, or whether it's on lighting, or whether it's on the slow reveal of the blinds on the 25th floor of the Indigo in Hong Kong, it's a fundamental part of that room experience. So its importance at this stage in the process, i.e. the development stage, the build stage, has grown tremendously, and hence why this panel is here.
What about the human aspect? We are traveling in order to learn, not to close ourselves up in the room to work at night until the morning because it's beautiful. I think, why do we travel? Because we have to make business connections, but how do you learn if you don't mix with local people? I think the most important thing about traveling is something else. It's not only the environmental and all the connectivity with all the devices. I think it's a human aspect, and it's lost somehow. It's lost somehow. Everything is getting very difficult now in a hotel room. You have to be a technician, and I find it dreadfully complicated nowadays. You want to switch off the light, you don't find it anymore because everything is from on a panel. I think it's why not having keeping things simple, more down to earth.
Okay. I think our presence is required somewhere else now. I've just been handed a note, so thank you, Melanie.
Get out.
Thank you very much for attending this morning, and yeah. Thanks, guys.